all doing? We all doing okay? I was just getting my frozen grapes. I'm all sorted now. We've got the frozen grapes, got my wine. And to be honest, I'm feeling a drink today. So we're gonna do that. 1 p.m. in the afternoon. I mean, you can do what you judge is best, but there are earlier times to drink. Yeah, how are we all doing? Been a few weeks, been a wee spell since the last one, just events got in the way. But we'll just get started. Got my wee frozen grapes here. I've got a new wine today. One that I haven't tried before. Called Silver Moki. It's a Sauvignon Blanc, cool climate. We like our climates cool because this channel, we are against global warming. I'm declaring that now. We have a very strong anti-global warming bent in this chat, so we really support cool climates. And I know it's very brave of me to say that because I'm cutting off a load of people who are otherwise pro global warming. But you know, I'm brave, so I will say that. This is apparently, I was on deal from £8 down to £6, so we'll see how it is. Only 11.5%, so it could be higher. But it's shit, man, they talk some shite, don't they? Shimmering like a diamond in the sea. It's a true reflection of a cool climate wine. What's it? Why is it a reflection of a cool climate wine? Is it not really a cool climate wine? That's weird. Okay, that's enough of that. Let's try it. Where's it from? It's from France. Wine of France. I don't know where in France, but it says wine of France. So we're, depending on how this wine is, we're gonna either come away with a really strong or anti-France take in just a minute. Doesn't say. Oh, Musel. I don't know. Somewhere in France. Oh, what? Yeah, somewhere in France. Somewhere in France. That'll do. Whoops. It is fine. It's not terrible. It's not great. France, I'm afraid the take that we're gonna have to go for France is that it's fine, and nobody wants that. Nobody wants such hedging. But I'm afraid that's the final take on France, as dictated by this one on deal wine that I bought. I will now only ever refer to France as fine. Sorry. Alright. While we're waiting for folk to filter in and we talk more about wine, I might just fiddle about with this tune that we've got on the go, and see what we can come up with. I'm aware I look a bit like I'm wearing pyjamas today, but I'm not. I could be, but I'm not. I couldn't be bothered putting on a shirt. I know you all deserve it, but I couldn't be bothered. Ryan, there is time. I'm in a funny mood today, so there is time for some chaos. Keep that for now. Sorry, we'll keep that for now. And get chatting. We'll come up with something new in a second. Yeah, how are we all doing? So this couple of weeks has been too much chaos, and we will summon the great slayer of the a true fight. Yeah, we'll get Jordan. Fuck, that would be funny, wouldn't it? Imagine Jordan P. Peterson appearing in the chat. What would happen? It would just be weird, I imagine. Do you think I can make Jordan Peterson cry on stream? I think I can make Jordan Peterson cry on stream. Anyway, yeah, it's been an odd few weeks. I can't remember if I've done a stream since the last video on book recs. Basically, that video did not do well. So we're working on hopefully one that will do better. I was up in the Fringe for last week, visiting my family and going to see some shows. Did not see many good shows. My name is John McGregor, the brother of Ewan McGregor. I don't even think I look like Ewan McGregor. I think you're just all confused because we're both Scottish. Like, I genuinely don't think there's any real, like, aesthetic similarity between me and Ewan McGregor. But people say it, and I think it's just because they're confused because of the voice. And we don't even have the same accent. The similarity, okay. Yeah, so I was up at the Fringe, yeah, for seeing some shows. I saw some terrible shows. I saw my friend Milo Edwards of Trash Future Pod went to his show, and that was good. That was maybe the only actual good show that I saw at the Fringe this year. So I don't know. It was probably my own fault for not going to see more shows, but yeah, there was lots of bad stuff I saw this year. The worst thing, which I promised to talk about on stream, was please make Jordan Peterson cry on stream. Hey, this is a call out post. If Jordan Peterson wants to come on stream with me one time, that would be fascinating. That would be absolutely fascinating. So there's an open invite. Jordan B. Peterson. Come on, and we can talk about dragons and how you're a raging misogynistic scumbag, and I can see if I can make you cry. We'll see what happens. Yeah, so I saw this one terrible show, and I feel really bad about it because my mum had asked me to look for some shows to see, and she likes like theatre and not stand-up comedy or anything like that, something more of a show. And I came across this one called The Gods, The Gods, The Gods, and it was advertised as like this examination or this like guide through Greek mythology, set to music and like interactive theatre. And I thought, oh, that'd be interesting. It'd be like, I'd imagine how I imagined it being would be like, different Greek gods and stories, whether or not they took place in modern day. I can't remember if that was part of the advert or not, but there's so much scope for different genre bending and different like stories you can tell through music with the Greek gods. And so I was like, okay, this sounds interesting. It got incredibly good reviews. Every review I was like, yeah, this is great. And so we went to that, and the first stage of this day which went wrong was that after buying these tickets, my mum got robbed to a tune of £2,500 into an overdraft. Someone stole her card details on the Fringe website, because like this started immediately after the Fringe. So the mood was already somewhat muted going into this. When you're robbed like that, you can get the money back from the bank. There's layers of insurance and shit like that the banks do. So she's getting the money back, which is fine, and they're not charging her overdraft fees because of the criminals putting a bunch of money in their overdraft. But that was already a dampener to the evening, and we turned up, and I started thinking, it's still a bummer and a hassle. But we turned up to the venue, and we were running late because of all this ordeals. We were like rushing to the venue. No, I mean it's Jerome. Is that Jerome? Jerome. It's a compliment. It's a complimentary comparison. I mean, who wouldn't want to look like Ewan McGregor? He's a very handsome man. So I appreciate it. I just don't see it. So I mean, continue making the comparisons all you want. Doesn't bother me. But yeah, so turned up to the venue, and they hand out these cards outside, and on the card was a quote which said, oh, what did it? Thank you, George. The theory Warren Kenobi. I do like that. The card said something like, everyone is an artist and a masterpiece, or some sort of bizarre bullshit platitude like that. And they were like, please enjoy this show. Come in, put your bags to the side, and come to the center of the room. And then on the back it said like every person is a masterpiece and an artist, or some bullshit like that. And I thought, oh no, oh dear, what are we doing here? What have we got ourselves in for? And I was like, okay, I'll put that to the side. It might just be one thing. I'm willing to give this time. I was there with my mum and my dad and my brother, and like we turned up and we were like, yeah, we'll dance in the middle. And my dad came out to the middle, and I was like, he's not gonna want to do this, is he? He's not gonna want to dance in the middle. But he bless him, came out for a bit, and then the act started, and the first song was fine. The first song was interesting enough. It was like God's coming out to... There's no need to apologise for being late. We're just fucking about here. This isn't like... I'm not giving a lecture. I'm drinking wine and talking about a shit show I went to. Nobody needs to apologise for being late. Yeah, so the first song starts, and the first song it was quite fun. It was like, has anyone heard of Passion Pit? Kind of like electro pop style, um, style music, and they were like, it was talking about like the gods of the Greek gods meeting in the modern day, and I was like, okay, yeah, I can get down with this. This is fine. Um, there's something. Thank you, Keith. Yeah, you shouldn't be sorry. In fact, anyone who comes in late should gloat about how late they are. No, that's not a good trend to start. Then everyone will stop turning up to the streams and start being late. Yeah, so the first one was alright. Like, I was already starting to think this might not be the best thing in the world, because there were certain, like, there was a white guy rapping, in a quite middle class accent, and yeah, I was like, okay, we're dealing with this. I'm still giving it some time. Who can deny a delicious cup of tea? But that was the first song. Then the second song started, and it was nothing to do with the Greek gods. It was like this love story between someone who's a Christian and someone who's not a Christian or an atheist or whatever, and the whole thing is like, oh, they can't get on together because one of them believes in God and the other one doesn't, and they kept doing it in this really, like, they kept doing things like they met at the calf, right? This bloke met at the calf, and I'm like, oh no, I don't like this. I don't like this at all. I don't like this. And at that point, I turned around to see my dad had walked off. He had gone to sit down, and he's 70 years old, so he's allowed. But like, yeah, they were coming. People were coming into the audience. The band were like coming into the audience and like looking directly at you, like looking at your soul and singing about like, he believed in the god of the sun and the stars, where she believed in the god of physics. Ooh, ah. I was like, fuck me, Jesus, this is weird. This is a weird thing to care about. This has nothing to do with the Greek gods either. Like, what? It gets worse and worse. So at that point I was like, okay, I think I'm probably done being charitable. And I turned around to my brother at that point, and he was just like this at me. And I was like, okay, good, he's feeling the same thing. And then like the next song starts, and it's like this fucking song that about like a woman whose husband had died, and that her god was love. Her temple was him coming through the door and sitting on the watching the telly and sitting watching TV. That's her god. And I was like, oh god, oh no, this is not gonna get better, is it? This is gonna get worse. This is gonna get worse. It's gonna get worse, and so it does get worse. And like this guy, my poor brother, the white rapper who kept like rapping about the calf and blokes and buskers singing their songs, and how all these individual people, they're the gods. And it gets to the return. Before we get to the worst song I'll get to, but they return to the gods of the Greek gods at one point, as the only other time that they mention the Greek gods, which I'm still annoyed about. And it's this bizarre tune about Zeus saying, oh, it's time that we retire, we're all chill now, our time has ended, and it's time for the new gods of like people being in love and things like that. And I was just thinking, like, Zeus wouldn't fucking do that. Fucking Zeus was a piece of shit. Like, if you're gonna do a show about Greek mythology and you're gonna paint Zeus like that, what are you doing? Like, at least make him raging against it, like, and at least inject some drama. You could have like different gods being more like that, and Zeus is just like, yeah, fuck that. then you'd have some drama, then you'd have a show, but no, they're like, Zeus stands up and he's like, we need to retire, our time is over, it's time for the gods of this new world, the people who are in love, the people who do the good things for each other, sometimes the bad things, but mainly good, because people are mainly good. And I was just like, fucking hell. At one point I thought, like, am I just cynical? Like, am I just too cynical? And then another line would come on, like someone would say, like, she altered her life to worship at, it was like Slampo, it was like, and her life altered as she worshipped at the altar of life. And it's like, fucking hell, this is what we're in for, this is what we're doing right now. It lasted for like a long time like that. And then the worst song, and we're getting to the worst song now, and then I'll move on to what happened after, was the worst song was this song about, and content warning right now for discussions of suicide. Not heavy discussions, because the nature of this show is that nothing heavy can happen, but you know, that's the topic that they were trying to address. So they started this fucking song. They started this fucking song with a busker, a bloke. Again, a bloke. These guys did not sound like they'd said the word bloke in their lives before they'd said it in this song. But they come out with the word bloke, and this fucking busker bloke, he's singing the song. He's a god. He's a god in his own right, because he sings the songs and he makes the music. Blah 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 blah. And he finishes his set and he's walking across a bridge, and on the one side there's like a fucking library, on the other side there's like a cathedral. Ooh, gods, reason and gods counterposed to each other. Very smart. Ugh. And he crosses the bridge and there's a guy standing on the edge of the bridge. And the busker fucking sings him a song or something, or tells him that he's like, he's enough, he deserves to live, and the busker, the busker convinces the guy not to jump off this bridge. And as the busker's walking away, the halos of the street lights make it look like he's an angel, because angels and gods, fucking same thing, whatever. This is the fucking level we're working at. And after this fucking guy goes to the library, finds a bunch of kids and starts drawing these like signs in crayon, which I think is bizarre. Like, I think it's bizarre that they chose him to write this stuff in crayon. But he starts writing a thing in crayon, and the people start singing what he's written, these fucking 27 crayon signs, and it's way too long to fit on a piece of A4 paper. But it's like, it's all shit like, you are enough. All these things pass and you will be enough. This is how we solve it. You don't jump off this bridge, because everything passes and it's a new dawn and you will be enough. And he passes them around, and then they finish the song. The three performers finish the song. They sort of look around like, yes, we've just solved mental health. We've knocked that one out of the park. This is mental health, and we fucking solved it. Who are the gods? We are the gods, because we solved mental health with 27 crayon signs saying you are enough. Real. At that point, my bafflement with the show moved on to some degree of anger. It was not good. I had this like weird thing that they constantly like did, that like, where they were like, not all matter can be created or destroyed, but also there were always only a constant amount of angels. And it's like, what are you even saying? Like, it was hitting you over the head with what it was trying to say, but it didn't know what it was trying to say. It was like a hammer that was confused about its purpose. Like hitting a nail but going, why am I doing this? What is this for? What are we building here? Just hitting a nail over and over again. Nobody understands what's going on, but it's still heavy-handed and obvious the whole time. So you're just sitting there going, oh God, oh my God. And sort of after it ended, my mum and dad had been sitting at the side, and the performers had been trying to get them out on stage, and my mum and dad were like, no, we're all right.
we're all right. We're all right. And then they kept coming round, and for some reason, really getting in my brother's face and rapping at him. Which, anytime I looked over at him while the guy was rapping at me, was just like this. And then, yeah, so we finished the show. We went over, and me and my brother went over to my parents, and my parents were like looking at us kind of sheepishly, because they were worried that we'd liked it. And we went over, and I just sort of collapsed on the table and went, "Whoa, oh my God, what was that?" And thus began roughly 45 minutes of drinking and ragging on this terrible, terrible show. Like, another thing, like, they weren't, like, the music wasn't good. Like, when you've got a show, right, where you're tying stories together, it's like, it's viewed as like, yeah, it was like GCSE drama. It was exactly like that. It was like, did you ever get in school where you get like an amateur dramatics group coming to school being like, we're going to tell you, hey kids, today we're going to tell you a show about something that is important. We've got some real issues today that we ought to discuss. Isn't it true that we all love? And isn't love God's love? But it's not God, it's us. Are we not God? Love is us and we are God's. All of us together. It is beautiful. And it was like that. It was unbelievably bad. But the music as well. Like, if I was putting together, and this is fucking simple stuff, if I was putting together a show about interweaving stories and interweaving themes, right? The thing that you do is you come up with music that reflects the themes. The music reflects the stories. The type of music interacts with the, like, you can genre bend, you can do really interesting stuff to communicate particular messages. Every single song sounded exactly the same. Every single song sounded like it was from like a 2010 Passion Pit album, like a B-side of a Passion Pit album. And that was like, and what was weird about that is that the content also sounded like it was from 10 years ago. It sounded like it was from a 2010, like, fucking not new atheist, because they were also like, some people believe in God and that's fine, but also is it an issue when people believe in God? But like, kind of felt like it was from 10 years ago as well. So it was like stepping in a time capsule of like really uncreative people. And it was just bizarre. And they were also like not great singers. There was lots of pitchiness, slight out of tune. Some, like, the tunes on their own, like one of the tunes would have been as a fine listen, but like the rest of them, you're just like, this is the same song copied and pasted over and over again. And then I started looking at the reviews for this show, and they were all of them like, well, 90% of them just like hugely complimentary. They were all just like, oh, this beautiful tour through the Greek gods was a great thing during the Fringe. And I was like, what? Like, I understand maybe liking the show, right? I can understand that if you're, you know, more credulous than me. I can understand it. But what it wasn't was a tour through the gods. Like, that simply wasn't what happened in the show. The text of the show was not about the Greek gods. There was like 2 songs about the actual Greek gods, and the rest of it was about people who love each other or some bullshit like that. Not that I'm cynical in any way. it was a bit like that. But it was really weird. And then I finally came across one review that was like, yeah, this show was like, what did they say? It was like a whole show of platitudes. And that's exactly what it was like. It was like, if anyone saw my post on it, it was like a whole show of hang in there posters, hang in there kitten posters, or like motivational posters that you'd get in an office. It was really, really bizarrely bad. And so yeah, that's my mum got robbed £2,500 to see this show. It was truly fucking awful. I couldn't believe how bad it was. And I've seen some like great stuff. That was the reason I picked that show, is because like I've seen some really good sort of musical, not musical theatre, but like theatre music sort of stuff. Yeah, Alto, the Fringe. Yeah, I've seen some good stuff. Like I've seen, one thing I saw was like someone who'd taken David Bowie's songs and formed some sort of incoherent but still like thematically consistent and interesting narrative with these David Bowie songs, and like was one of the few things that Bowie had licensed his music to in like the theatre, and that was really good. And like years and years ago, I saw this great act that was that did a show called The Great Downhill Journey of Little Tommy, that was like a genre bending like journey of this little boy leaving his house and trying to cycle to the seaside, and all the various strange characters that he meets along the way. And what that showed, and it was also like live illustrated or painted behind them. It was really good. And what that show did was took these stories and did what I said would make sense, used the music to reflect what was going on, because that's like basic shit, right? They had an old, like for example, they had like an old drunkard character who sounded like Tom Waits, and they did whole like Tom Waits song, and then his old lover, who was like a jilted, beautiful older jazz woman, did this like incredible jazz song, and it was like just two guys, and they did amazing things with their voices, like sounding like all these different characters. And I thought that maybe the gods would be something like that, and it wasn't. It was what I would call some of the worst of the Fringe. I just baffling, like, so. Oh, I saw Milo as well too. Milo was good. I enjoyed Milo's show. It was a good show. Yeah. So and so last weekend, I had gotten free tickets to see a couple of things at the BBC Proms, which are like, for anyone who doesn't know, they're like sort of orchestral events that are open to the public, and they're quite fun. I went to see the Earth Prom, which was music from like Planet Earth, and Hans Zimmer was there, and Murray Gold, who like Doctor Who composer Murray Gold, was there, and that was like good. And then the second day we went to see a really good thing, which was a South African jazz songbook, and one of the songs in that was did this sort of thing of like interacting with African gods and how gods interacted with what was happening in South Africa and all that stuff, and it was like incredibly good. Like that one song they did was like everything that the gods wished it could have been, but it was done by people who were good at what they did. I mean, maybe the other work these folk have done is better, but fucking hell, that was a bad show. That was such a bad show. Yeah. I just saw Trainspotting and Vittorio Angeloni, both bangers. Sons of Kermit and the International Festival was out though. Ah, that's a shame. Yeah, so it's a very mixed bag, the Fringe, like. And it depends on how much money you're willing to spend. Like if you don't have all that much, you're going to most of the time you're going to free shows. You're gonna see a lot of shit. The first thing that we went to was a showcase of Jewish comedians, and it wasn't very good, and the funniest thing that happened was that there was a mix-up in the booking, and one German comedian was booked by accident, who wasn't Jewish, and he had the best set, and he was very good, but yeah, the rest of the showcase wasn't very good. I saw a fucking terrible showcase as well on like the Saturday. It was one of those things that didn't just make me not laugh, but made me feel kind of sad for the performers. That was really bad. I intended to see more, but I kind of got caught up just hanging around. I had a friend over for on the Saturday, so we were just drinking around and having a good time. What else did we see? Oh, I went to see Run the Jewels, not part of the festival, but I was supposed to be seeing Rage Against the Machine and Run the Jewels, but Rage Against the Machine pulled out. So just went to see Run the Jewels in Corn Exchange, and we were like right up at the front. It was fucking brilliant. Run the Jewels were great. What else did I see? Oh, so this wasn't this year, but I don't know if I've told this on stream before. One of the worst things I've ever seen at the Fringe, and I've seen some bad stand-up in my time. I grew up around Edinburgh. I've seen some bad stand-up, and so one time a few years ago, I was on this like showcase where they get like comedians to do 5 minutes a piece, and this was on the top of a double-decker bus that was parked in one of the pub beer gardens. It was like a giant purple bus, and this was at like 2:30 in the morning, on a Thursday. So these poor comedians, they were in a bad way. The odds were stacked against them, but some came on and some were doing their best and doing okay. And then this poor fucking American guy got up, and he got up and crouched down into this top floor of this bus and spoke into the microphone, and he said, "Hello, I'm an American, but don't hold it against me." And there was like silence for what felt like a long time, but couldn't have been longer than like a few seconds, but it felt so long. And the silence went on, and eventually there was just a voice at the back of the bus that just went, "No, I think we will." And then this poor guy had to suffer through 5 minutes of a bus load of Scottish people bullying him, basically. And it was a great show in the end, but that poor guy, he looked like really young as well. He looked like he didn't really know what he was doing. Poor guy. And I was thinking about that. I saw a TikTok from one guy talking about how excited he was, a young comedian, how excited he was to be in Edinburgh for the Fringe. And it was like he had this joy in his eyes, and it was like watching someone walk into traffic without knowing it's coming to hit him. And I saw that guy in Edinburgh, and we were here nearing the end of the Fringe, and he looked so tired. He looked so tired, and I was just like, "Oh, you poor man, you poor child. You didn't know what you were doing, and you've come to the comedy crucible, and here you are, exhausted and flying for someone else's show." Yeah, it was a bit like watching a kid watch bakers eat baking chocolate for the first time, or like, yeah, it was really sad. The Fringe. So that was my experience in the Fringe, and welcome to Tinfoil Pain as well. Welcome to the stream. We were just talking about the terrible Fringe show that I went to see. Yeah. I did find out that so I was actually went for a drink with Milo after a couple of days after seeing a show, and we were talking about terrible jobs that we'd done in the Fringe, because my first job was flyering for the Fringe. One year when I was 18, I flyered for the Fringe, and I busked alongside doing that. And the company that hired me initially said that they were going to do it for hours. Was there anything good after the Fringe? What do you mean after the Fringe? I'll come back to that. What do you mean by after the Fringe? Anyway, was there anything good out there? I mean, there's the Fringe is so big. There is definitely good stuff. I've seen some great stuff at the Fringe before in my life. My Milo Edwards show was really funny. That was good. But I wasn't there. I mean, I wasn't there long enough to. Normally when I'm there, I've been living there, so I've been able to pop in and out throughout the months. But I was only there for like a few days, so didn't get to do loads of stuff. and didn't have enough money to like check out some of the more showy stuff. My brother saw a bunch of good stuff. He saw more of like theatre play stuff, and he thought that was all good. I only really saw one decent thing. But yeah, so my first job was flyering for the Fringe, and initially the company had said, we'll pay you for the hours worked. It's like, it was at that point the minimum wage was like £5.70 for under 21s, so it was like £5.70 for an hour. Do this stuff, you get the money, blah 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 blah. Simple arrangement. What normally happens when you have a job? Yes, this is not unusual. But after working a week, lots of hours, so many, like 30 hours that week, maybe a bit more, and I came down to the venue, which was Hive in Edinburgh. Anyone knows that? Hive, the grimmest place in the world past 2 a.m. Hive. And I got there, and the person who was taking stubs was like, oh, we changed the system so that you don't get paid hourly. What you get paid by is how many people come in with your specific discount code, and you get paid by like £1 for each discount code that comes in. And you have had 4 people come in with your discount code, so we're going to give you £4. And I was like, what? You're going to give me £4 for working 30 hours this week? That's not how flyering works either, because people don't keep flyers. They see things and they might come in at a different time, but they don't come in and go, oh, we're going to get this £1 off this £5 gig, it'll be amazing. And so they fucked me over that. And busking that week, I made like £120 from busking. So I was like, I'm gonna busk, I'll be fine, I don't need this fucking job. So I was talking to my friend Milo after that, and we were talking, because he's been at the Fringe for years, and we were talking about this, and he was like, oh, this guy used to be at the Fringe, but Hive used to be his venue, but he got kicked out for really scummy behaviour. And I was like, what was his name? And Milo said the guy's name, and I was like, yes, that was him. That was that boss who fucked me over. So it was nice to see him get kicked out of his venue for being a scumbag. So in the end of the day, sit back and watch your enemies fuck themselves. And yes, I consider that guy an enemy. If you take a step back, the gods was a very meta bit of absurdist theatre. I mean, I could almost buy that, because the crowd were kind of bizarre as well. There was like a lot of like young women who kind of didn't know what was going on, and then there was this couple who were like in their like 50s, who were really, really drunk and really, really into each other, and it was so distracting. Throughout the whole thing, there was you just like catch these two like middle-aged greying this couple just like fully like feeling each other up on the middle of this dance floor, and it was added an extra dimension of weirdness to this whole fucking experience. Is it the one Al Murray defended on Twitter? I could be anyone. I don't know. I don't think it was someone. It wasn't recent. It wasn't the guy that got kicked out of the Pleasance for showing his dick and using racial slurs. That wasn't him. But yeah, it was some other scumbag. Yeah, if you give someone a flyer for a club at Cowgate on the night, and then it makes a little sense. Yeah, the Fringe, like it just made they were just fucking us. And I a year or two later, I came across a piece of like investigative journalism on the topic, and that was just apparently a really common thing that promoters would do. They'd get a bunch of 18-year-olds in their first jobs, and they'd basically lie to them and tell them this is how much they were going to get paid, and then fuck them over. I think there has been some tightening up of the regulations, although I'm not sure how effective that would have been since then, because it was just endemic. Yes, the Fringe. The Fringe is a hotbed of exploitation, money going to landlords and fucking Airbnb wankers. It's really no longer a fringe cultural event anymore. It's just an excuse to funnel money into landlords' pockets. So yeah. A weird thing happened, a mother and her child came into the and left. I mean, I wouldn't bring a child to Milo's show, to be honest. Alright, that's enough of me ranting. Should we put another tune on? It'll be better than the gods, the gods, the gods. I know I only have one genre that I do, but still. Thank you, Foxy Fanboy. Bring the funk. Okay.
That's quite fun. If it's any example about how mainstream the Fringe is now, American theatre magazine Playbill had a guide to the Fringe for this year and a few years previous. Playbill. Yeah, it doesn't. You can't really call it the Fringe anymore, can you? Like, for anyone who doesn't know, the Fringe started as like, there was the International Edinburgh Arts Festival, and the Fringe started as like a underground alternative to the International Arts Festival, where it was like, where people could come and they could do cheap, off the beat theatre, and you could do like interesting stuff there. And now the Fringe might as well just be the International Festival. It's just the same. It's all expensive, all exploitative, all not great. And I think there's been increasing irrelevance of the Fringe, because it used to be like that if you were a comedian, you had to do the Fringe to make it. Like, that just was part of being a comedian. You had to basically, there was the two big festivals I think are the Montreal Comedy Festival and the Fringe, and those were like the two things that comedians had to do to have a career. And I don't think that's true anymore. I think like the explosion of alternative routes, it's not made being a comedian easier, but it's meant that you don't necessarily have to do these two things to make it. Things like podcasts and all that shit where comedians are making it, and it's telling that a lot of you recognise folk from like TikTok at the Fringe, and because that's where they're making their career, making their money, rather than, you know, at the Fringe. I'm sure it still has relevance, but like, yeah, it's I think it's going to decline in relevance in the future. I think this year there was far fewer folk than previous years. I think even previous to last year. I'm not sure. But yeah, the end, COVID was part of it, obviously. But like, yeah, it's I think it's been dying for a little while. Its relevance, its cultural relevance has been on the decline, partly because it's become so fucked. I'm gonna eat these grapes and then get some more frozen grapes and have another glass of wine. So the other thing I wanted to talk about on this stream, the other thing that has gotten to me, yeah, they sold like a fifth year tickets. Yeah, I think so. Which is mad. It's a big decline. Related to the arts, perhaps, as I took a listen to Muse's new album. Fucking hell. Oh, thank you, James. I'll give you a cheers in a minute, because all super chats get cheers. I'll give you a cheers in a minute once I've got more frozen grapes and poured more wine, then you'll get a cheers. But thank you so much, that's incredibly kind. It's really nice. Yeah. Fucking hell. Yeah, I listened to Muse's new album. There is a song in that album called "We Are Fucking Fucked," and the lyrics go, "Hey, hey, hey." Actually, let me do a dramatic reading. Let me find my phone. Let me do a dramatic reading of the lyrics to the song "We Are Fucking Fucked" by Muse, because it is art, it's poetry. You're right. And I'll just bring it up on my phone right now. It's really great stuff. I'll just make sure everything's right. Muse, 2022, lyrics by Matthew Bellamy. This song is called "We Are Fucking Fucked." These lyrics are from the end of the song, the climax, the apex of the song. In many ways, it's ultimate thesis, its ultimate statement to be brought forward into the world. And as this is the final song on the album, the thesis that Muse would like you to continue with
going forward. This is the thing that they want you to remember, to leave you with, in their album Will of the People. An excerpt from We Are Fucking Fucked. Hey, hey, hey. Fuck off. Hey, hey, hey. Stockpile. Hey, hey, hey. Fuck off. Hey, hey. We are getting fucking fucked. That was an excerpt from Muse's latest album, Will of the People. Poetry by Matthew Bellamy. The poet, the voice of a generation, a poet. Many people have compared him to the great bard, that is William Shakespeare, for his commanding use of language to communicate themes, like we are fucked. Now some people may criticize Matthew Bellamy. He may criticize him for being immature, for being creatively and intellectually stagnant, for saying nothing, and for ripping off other, some might say superior bands like Queen or Radiohead. Those people, of course, are cowards, who don't appreciate that Matt Bellamy is one of the most committed performance artists of this generation. He embodies what would happen if incredible musical talent, incredible musical ability was given to a 14-year-old boy who could not age. And that, it's a harrowing thing to witness. And I think it's quite beautiful. And we have to appreciate his commitment to this piece of performance art that has been on the go for 25 years now. In fact, I believe Muse formed the year I was born. Maybe a bit later, but I believe that's the case. And this is it's just an incredible piece of art. Not many people have that ability in them. And yes, Graham Dodd Kai is right. Let us hear. Let us have a hey 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 amen in the chat in dedication to our generation's greatest performance artist. Hey 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 amen. Thank you everyone. Thank you for attending this sermon. Thank you everyone for taking this seriously. And we'll be back in 1 minute. I want to be clear, like, I of course am still a massive fan of Matthew Bellamy, and because of his performance artistry over the years. But I was a huge Muse fan when I was about 14, 15, and 16. Like those years, I was I was obsessed with them. I was a huge fan. And you know, if they were a legitimate, like if they were doing something completely earnestly and weren't the great performance artists that they are, I would be bemused by their continued stagnation as a band, and apparently as people too. It's very odd. I did read an article from Matt Bellamy interviewing him, and the man does not seem like the someone who has much of a clue what's going on in the world. He described himself as some sort of like revolutionary centrist or something, and says he likes to hang around in like, what's that Silicon Valley, looking for startups to invest in. I mean, to his credit, he did say that Elon Musk is a fanny, so we can't really mark him down completely. Right, I've got a cheers to give to James Barrels. Cheers for the super chat. Thank you. Super chats get a cheers. I voted for him as the best songwriter in a poll for Q magazine in 2009. I probably would have done the same thing. How old was I in 2009? I was like 15. Yeah, so I might have done a similar thing. That was 15. Was that before or after Bebo? And I remember Bebo, which was revolutionary sentence is a gross combination of words. For anyone who doesn't know, Bebo was like a proto Facebook style social media. So were those frozen grapes in the wine? Yes, I don't know if I've mentioned this on stream before, but if you put frozen grapes, you freeze some grapes, and you put them in your wine, just like this, just bobbing about in there. You can actually cool down the wine, and then this is the important part, because you might be thinking like, just use ice. Ice cools down wine. Ice will dilute the wine, but you know what doesn't dilute the wine? Frozen grapes. It's a real trick for you. So for anyone who doesn't know, who hasn't heard of this before, but yeah, there you go. What was I saying before I was derailed? I was talking about Muse. Bebo. I was talking about Bebo. Yes. My Bebo page had a Muse song play as soon as you went onto it, and it had like Origin of Symmetry stuff all over it, next to your top 5 friends list and things like that. Yeah, I really liked Muse. I liked other bands as well. What were the other bands I was really into when I was a teenager? I really liked Queens of the Stone Age. You could freeze wine. The problem with freezing wine though, alcohol has a different freezing temperature to water. So when you're freezing alcohol, different parts of it freeze at different levels. So you might end up like with weird results. That's why if you put like vodka in the freezer, it turns kind of syrupy because the water freezes first, and kind of the vodka kind of becomes more syrupy because the water like freezes from it. It's weird. Other bands I was into, I really liked Queens of the Stone Age and the White Stripes when I was younger, the Strokes and things like that. Yeah, Queens of the Stone Age is a difficult one now, given that Josh Homme is a piece of shit. But yeah, I was really into them. Rammstein phase, yeah. I never had a big metal phase because one time when I was about maybe 9 years old, my brother he had this loft bed, the big pole on the ground. It was like 6 foot high off the ground, and it had a pole holding it up. And I was annoying my brother, who's 7 years older than me, and he taped me to the pole, the pole of his bed, wrapped tape around me and held me there. And I was there for a long time, and he left Slipknot playing, and left me there and forgot that I was there. And I was there for a long time, until eventually the sellotape broke and I fell off. And ever since then, that metal and stuff like that just reminds me of that terrible experience. White Lies. I remember them vaguely, but I don't remember any of their songs. Anyway, let's do another song. Let's do another piece of music. I'm feeling it. not entirely happy with that one, but we'll leave it for now and we'll return to it soon. We, as in all the lovely people have in the chat, and what was it? Antidote to Marxist loneliness. That's nice. I do like the vibes of these streams. They're nice and chill. I was considering. Thank you. This is an old shirt that no longer fits my brother that he gave to me. I was considering calling off the stream tonight because I was feeling kind of shitty. Just things going on. Too many things juggling. So feeling a bit stressed, but I'm glad I did it. It always makes me feel better. Yeah. What else was I going to talk about today? Did I have anything else on the plate that I really wanted to discuss? Or was it mainly Muse and terrible Fringe shows? I mean, I should probably not say that actually. I was gonna tell a story about the Proms, but I don't want to say anything out of turn in case someone sees. Nothing to do with the actual. Well, actually, no. We can't talk about the actual fucking Proms. We can't fucking slag off Chris fucking Packham, whatever his name is, for prom. The BBC prom that I was at on Saturday, was like I said, was the music from all these like Planet Earth and Frozen Planet, David Attenborough sort of documentaries, and they had Chris Packham, who's a yeah, we can talk about the Proms. We'll talk about the Proms. And Chris Packham, who's a nature presenter here in the UK. He does a lot of stuff on like bird watching and like British wildlife kind of watching stuff. And there was a whole section on like Attenborough at one point, and he was like, the thing about David Attenborough, nobody can ever say a bad word about David Attenborough. And I was just like, mate, you've not spent enough time on left Twitter. we fucking regularly drag David Attenborough for his mad Malthusian in the correct sense of the word, not the fucking Caleb Maupin shit. Oh yeah, that Caleb Maupin shit, that was insane, that was mad. But Malthusian in the correct sense of the word, eugenic population control rhetoric that he's always spouting off. So like, yeah, lots of people have bad words to say about David Attenborough. You just don't know them, I imagine, because you live in a bubble. But like this happened, and I was like, we'll let that go. It's we're not gonna pick up on that shit. Then like 10 minutes later, Chris Packham starts giving this speech about global warming and about like the importance of the importance of maintaining our environment. And it's like, yeah, sure, we're sitting in a hall where most people, not me because I got them for free, have paid a whole bunch of money to get tickets to see an orchestra, and we're talking about climate change. Sure, it's a bit like we're sitting on the Titanic while it sinks and we're playing music, but whatever, it's par for the course. But then he starts talking about how the driver of climate change is the population growth. He starts talking about how in the US the explosion of farmland has meant the destruction of environment, which is true, of course, and then but attributed that not to the imperative of agricultural industries, and indeed all industries under capitalism, to maintain growth or else collapse and be destroyed, but instead attribute it to the population growth of the world, and then says, I'm not sure he thought this through. I don't know how. He doesn't strike me as necessarily fashy, but liberals, your politics is not that far from the fascists. Just saying. But he starts talking about this population problem being population, and then he starts saying it's on all of us to deal with climate change. And those two statements, I don't know if he thought through what those statements imply. Because if population growth is the problem, what do you want us to do about it, Chris? What are we... What do you want us to do about that, Chris? Just want you to think about what you expect us to do about that. So yeah, that was it. He didn't say much else about it. He didn't talk about. They obviously didn't talk about the fact that, you know, the American population consumes astoundingly more resources and has an astoundingly larger carbon footprint than not just any other part of the global south, but to be honest, any other part of the global north. I didn't talk about how the global north consumes vast amounts of money, vast amounts of resources and carbon at the expense of the global south. Yeah, that was weird. The music was good. I mean, here's the thing about the music for the music for these sort of Planet Earth shows is all very serviceable. Like it does its thing. It knows what it's doing, which is to be inspiring, leave you feeling kind of teary, create big soundscapes, do some sort of like evocative kind of pastiches of famous, like the one they showed of, like, you know, that's the famous scene of the giraffes who smack their necks against each other, and they like frame it as like a duel between, like a western duel between two giraffes. So they rip off the good, the bad, and the ugly, all that stuff. It's all very, very serviceable. It's not the most like fascinating music in the world. It's like fine, and like I've got a 4-chord loop in the background right now, so you know I'm obviously not against uninteresting music, but you know it was fine. And it was enjoyable. It was nothing compared to the South African Jazz Songbook, which we went to the next day, which was incredible. And that music was fucking brilliant. It's no Muse. Yeah. Yeah, and they had this like the other thing. They had in their like tribute to David Attenborough, they showed all this footage from his career, but I'm not sure they'd really thought it through, because they showed this early career footage of him in this like ridiculously colonial and racial like framing of him in his civilized garb examining these like indigenous people, and it was all like framed in this deeply racist way. They clearly hadn't thought about it, and no one who'd made the reel that they were putting together had thought at any point, should we maybe just focus on the animal stuff and avoid this 1960s and 70s style colonial frame. That hadn't crossed their mind at any point, evidently. So that was a bit uncomfortable as well. But you know, aside from those moments and the general feeling of being on a sinking Titanic, it was good, and the music was largely good. Hans Zimmer came out at one point and he called the crowd delicious, and it was the most sort of fucking German moment. He was the most tiny little German man. It was amazing. It was just, oh hello, you are so delicious. Oh, I love you so much. You're so delicious in my little palm of my hand. It was extremely German, and that was funny. Yeah. I mean, it's on either might be televised. It's on BBC iPlayer anyway. So if you want to hear Chris Packham talk about how the problems of the environment are the fucking population growth, then you can do it. If you don't want to do that, you can avoid it. The Royals in attendance? No Royals in attendance apparently. I didn't know there was apparently a Royal box. I didn't know where it was, but I'm sure someone would have pointed it out. So I just read something in chat. The carbon storage using human beings and burying them at sea is what Musk might propose. Is this a real thing that Musk is thinking about? Because that's baroque. Yeah. Grim. Yeah. The South African... If you don't want to listen to any of them, the South African songbook was very good. That had a great conductor as well. And at the Metropole Orchestra was backing them up, and they've played with like Nina Simone and Ella Fitzgerald and all this stuff. Oh, I mean, everybody likes a nature documentary. Yeah, they're great. Everybody loves Planet Earth. They're by themselves not bad. Like they focus as long as they focus on the animals and stuff, they're generally fine. Muse proposed going to another planet, which is what Musk would say too. Actually, in that recent interview with whoever it was, with Matt Bellamy, he did say that plan to go to Mars was silly, didn't make any sense, and he said, we've got a planet, it obviously makes sense to protect the one that we live on. So Matt Bellamy is more realistic about climate change and extraterrestrial expansion than Elon Musk, which I guess is an indictment of Elon Musk, if any more indictment was needed. Hello, Brittany Bolt. Welcome to the stream. We were just talking about Planet Earth and Elon Musk. One good thing and one bad thing. That's dialectics. Yeah, nature. They've got. Yeah, I mean, I remember a few years ago, like people were like, Matt's read one more book than Elon has. Yeah. There was a few years ago. There was a big like hurrah about Planet Earth or Frozen Planet, like using footage from like a zoo behavior for polar bears, and they were like, oh, it's fake footage, and there was a big like scandal about it, and I never really understood like what the problem of that was, because like they were clear that this is a behavior which is observed in the wild, so it's not a false behavior, but it's just like the way to film and communicate this behavior is easier in this context, and I don't really see that as a problem, like whether it's real or not. I mean, everything's fake, right? We're all in agreement here. Oh, thank you. I like when people check out the Human Rights and Marxism video. I quite like that video. I'm going to do an update on that video soon. I think maybe after the masculinity one, I might do one on human rights and neoliberalism specifically, to sort of communicate that side of my research, since it's not being communicated as much as properly, and I think I've got some interesting stuff to say on that. So I might be doing more on the human rights and neoliberalism front in a minute. Yeah. I know about the thing about the captive wolves, but I think the specific scandal about polar bears was something that was like they knew was like an established behavior that had been observed in the wild before many times, and it was just like, yeah, this we know we're not miscommunicating anything. This is a behavior that's established. This is just an easy way to film it and to communicate it to people. And people got really mad, like, oh, it was fake. Planet Earth is fake. It's like, yeah, I mean, like, they're creating narratives out of animals' lives. It's going to be fake to some degree. It's just like what important things are fake and what important things are real. That's, whatever. Stop being weird about it. There are better criticisms of Planet Earth than that. Yeah, like I'd rather they did it to. I'd rather they like were able to do that. Obviously, zoos aren't a good thing, and we should be, looking for ways to scale down and eventually abolish the notion of zoos. Um, but if you're gonna, it's probably less invasive to do that shit to an animal in a zoo than it is doing it to an animal in the wild. How are you gonna do that without freaking them out? At least there's like established infrastructure for observation within animals in a zoo. People get weird about shit. Alright, I'm gonna do a different song because this one's getting on my tits. I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna lay down something that's a bit nicer to chat to, because this is gonna give us a very urgent energy, and I'm not sure that's what we're after. Yeah, we're still going. Oh, yeah, not bad. Not bad. We're doing okay. It's got that fucking weird house music style track down. Fun things happen. We've had some wine. We've still got some grapes. All's good. Anything chat? What questions? I should say this before I try to lay down a track. Like, before what think of things to talk about? Any particular topics that you're interested in hearing about? Stuff going on that you want to hear my slightly tipsy opinion on. I should say that before I lay down tracks, so that you can collate some stuff. Yeah, I need to. What I need to do. I need to find more time to actually practice playing and have some more like variation stuff. Human rights and international relations according to a Marxist point of view. You know who does have a dissertation, a PhD dissertation on not human rights specifically, but rights frames and international institutions from a Marxist point of view is the novelist China Melville. His PhD thesis was on that, which is interesting. Anyone can ask about anything. Like the whole There's the poltergeist. You can ask about anything. Feel free to ask anything you want. I might not answer it, but that's a different matter. And the question of human rights and international relations. To be honest, international relations as a discipline doesn't really have much to say on Marxism, and Marxism doesn't really have much to say on international relations, because international relations is a fundamentally liberal discipline, and there are people who do bits and pieces pushing the bounds of that within the discipline, but the trends of it themselves are fundamentally liberal, and I remember that from my undergraduate and to some degree my postgraduate human rights. I can hear a dog barking in the microphone. My human rights and international relations masters, everything was very liberal. And an undergrad, any international relations thing was always like, here are the two main perspectives on international relations. You've got the realist perspective and the liberal perspective and the Marxist perspective. I remember specifically, the Marxist perspective was framed as everything is class war, therefore international relations is a form of class war. And it's like, yeah, I guess so, but what do you mean? Like, what do you think that means? I'm interested to hear about you, my tutor. Am I familiar with the animated version of Animal Farm? I am. I watched that when I was a child, and it scared the bejesus out of me. It always frightened me when I was a kid. But yeah, international relations. I'd be interested to see if I'm currently desperately looking for a job right now, trying to like find some teaching work so I don't have to go back into admin. Though that at this point is looking more and more likely. But I'd be interested to teach international relations because I'm technically qualified. I've got a master's degree in technically international relations. So I'd be interested to come across some of the reading material and teach some students in international relations and see if I can see if I can deal with some of the stuff that gets told to them in these supposed left-wing institutions that are the university. Desperately looking for a job. Here's to desperately looking for a job. The thing, I wouldn't mind an admin job, to be honest, at this point. Like, it just depends. Like, if I'm working an admin job, I want to have more time working. Like, it would have to be part time, and I'd want to have more time to work on YouTube stuff and PhD stuff as well. But there's a load of like, it's quite like I came to my PhD working in admin for a couple years, and it's a bit depressing to go to do a PhD and spend 3 years away from admin and then end up in exactly the same position as you were before you started it. It's a little bit depressing, but we'll work through it. We'll deal with these things as they come. I don't mind admin work really. Like, if I was just doing the PhD, I'd probably be fine with working full-time admin work. But I want to keep the YouTube stuff going because I like it. So it's trying to like find balance between these things. And to be honest, like at the amount, like my sort of regular income from YouTube, if I make £400-500 a month, I can probably scrape by on what I've got. So I don't really need a full-time job. It's just, you know, these are my internal calculations. You all don't need to hear about that. Just look at the influences of settler colonial states had on defining what genocide was. Yeah, no, exactly. The international legal order is fundamentally an expression of liberal capitalist hegemony, even if there are some pushes within that boundary. I think that this, you know what I've been thinking about, this to illustrate this point that I'm about to make. Joe Biden. So I've noticed that people seem to have trouble grasping that within the parameters of a certain logic there are still room to push in certain directions. Hence, within capitalism you get things like social democracy and neoliberalism, where one is undoubtedly like more aggressive in certain ways and has resulted in some really terrible, like absolutely terrible results for workers in the imperial core, results which were already in the case for workers outside the imperial core and all that during social democracy. But you know, there was a clear difference between social democracy and neoliberalism, and obviously that these are both within the bounds and the logic of capitalism. So there's obviously room to wiggle and push certain bounds of certain things within a certain logic, and people don't seem to be able to get that with Joe Biden. I've noticed they're like, oh yeah, Joe Biden, he's what's driving is this? Why is he doing all this stuff right now? It's like, yeah, well, there's an election. He's doing things he thinks people will like for an election, and obviously that's not the entirety of it, because there are much more popular things which he could be doing, which would, you know, also win him elections. But he's not going to do those things because, like, say, making all university free would, I imagine, be quite a popular policy. Making healthcare free at the point of use would probably be quite a popular policy if it happened. But these are things which are within a bound that he cannot push that far. But, you know, with forgiving a low amount of student debt, which is an undoubtedly good thing, it's obviously within the bounds of a political logic, and that logic is there's an election coming up, and it's been so strange to me watching people get confused by that. It's very strange to me. Anyway, that's a roundabout way of saying something about Marxism and international relations. Marxism doesn't really have a theory of international relations, in short, because international relations is a liberal field, and we would want to break down the bounds of that field, and rather than create a certain space within it to be the Marxist international relations. Yeah. Cannot or doesn't want to. I mean, at the end of the day, that's probably the same thing. There are certain, like, I mean, if you want to get into like the sort of structural blocks that are on certain things that have been set up throughout the neoliberal era. I mean, things like the debt ceiling and things like that, which are much more, which are much more limiting in what you can and cannot do without meeting certain criteria. Then there's some things he simply cannot do, and that's the same in the UK. There are things that have been structured and like to remove responsibility out of democratically controlled hands and into bureaucratic institutions like the Bank of England or like the Office of Budget Responsibility and things like that, which really bound in what political power can do within those spheres, and these things can only be overcome with strong direct action. Yeah. Hey, thanks for dropping by, Liz. It's always a pleasure to have you. Human rights, Marxism, and international relations do not carry well. I mean, in terms of an international relations thing, probably not. Not in my experience. Not that many. Like there are human rights groups which are compatible with a Marxist understanding of how social movements work, which use human rights, and they are international, but they wouldn't be. I wouldn't describe them through a frame of international relations. If you're looking at human rights via Marxism, the frame of international relations is probably not the most useful one to understand what's going on. Instead, you'd want more Gramscian, probably inspired framework. Or you'd want something like I use, which is about social movements and all that shit. Yeah. What was Michelle saying about the Biden shit? It reminds me a lot of the death of neoliberalism. Socialism is when the government does stuff, takes that can't seem to understand how things like the welfare state can function within neoliberalism. Yeah, I mean, so one of the interesting things about Biden's policies, remember when his infrastructure bill first came out, and there were a few voices who were like, this is the end of neoliberalism, big infrastructure spending, which by the way is something consistent with New Labour's policies. They did a bunch of infrastructure spending as well, but what people fail to notice is that Biden's infrastructure plan, what still not being enough in its pure form, before it got whittled down, still pushed a bunch of money to private corporations, still was a vehicle for establishing public-private partnerships, which had never caught on in the US before that period. They'd been surprisingly resistant, probably because it's already so privatised already, so there wasn't much room for public-private partnerships like that, but they're a big feature of New Labour policies. And in that way, I think Biden's administration is much more similar to New Labour's administration, notwithstanding Biden's latent union connection, which was not something of New Labour connected to New Labour, but it's much closer to New Labourism than I think it necessarily is to Obama's style of neoliberalism, which is interesting. Yeah, that seems to be my slightly uninformed opinion. What's appeared. Yeah, I mean the James is right. Within the imperial core, we're still at the top of those global value chains, extracting all that wealth to fund our limited and disciplinary welfare states. All right, let's pour this last wine. Tell you what. Maybe another 2 after this. I'll pour this wine. I might lay down something. Maybe just something a bit chiller, a bit less dancey, and we can think of this time. I will say, think of any questions or topics you'd like to talk about. Because I am trying to avoid thinking about the job market, because it fucking sucks. Dancey is good, but I'm thinking something kind of bluesy, something nice and chill for a bit. Holy shit. Thank you. Sorry, your name, Kitty H Juice. That's incredible. That's amazing. Thank you so much. Fucking wow. Super chats, get a cheers. Cheers. For the wine fund. You're too kind. What are we all thinking of this jam? Yeah, so that fucking incredible super chat there. Yeah, so we've thought of questions, thought of things to say. Let me just scroll up the chat, see if there's anyone that missed. What do I think of the about independence movements in the UK? I can talk. I'll talk about Scottish independence in a second, because that's the only one that I necessarily feel. Well, I can talk about NIP because they're a joke, but we can talk about them in a second. Have I travelled outside the UK? Yeah, I mean, I lived in South Carolina on a year abroad once, for a year. That was interesting. Yeah, I've been around. I've not left the UK in 5 years. Not since 2018. I went to. I have a friend who, well, at that time lived in Paris, so I stayed with him for a bit, and that was nice. That was the last time I met a bunch of. There was a friend from South Carolina, well, not from, a Dutch friend who I met in South Carolina, and then we met up with a bunch of friends and had a good time. Went down to Nice, that was fun. I've been around Europe, been to Brazil, I've been to Kenya. Those are the furthest afield that I've been. Yeah, I've been around a bit. Not in a while. Inventing jobs teaching skills, applying for jobs. Sorry, what is that? What's it say? My eyes are... I wonder if I need an upgrade of my contact lenses. That would be a hassle. In a better world, there'd be an academic position out there with blues jams amongst the preferred qualifications. I mean, I'm sure there's some eccentric professor somewhere who takes a guitar to lectures. I'd love to come. I have a book on radical Bolivian history that I've been meaning to get to. Where would I like to travel more to? I've never been further east than Germany, so I'd like to go further east than Germany. That would be nice. To be honest, I'd like to visit anywhere and everywhere if I could, but time and things to do and expense and the environmental cost that you have to consider as well. There's lots and lots of places I'd like to visit. I'd like to visit Greece. I think Greece might be somewhere on my list as soon as I can. First of all, as soon as I can get a new passport, which I need to do. That's on my list as somewhere to go. I've got a friend moving to Portugal soon, and I'd like to. I've never been to Portugal. I'd like to visit him when he goes to Portugal. And the good thing about when friends live places is you can stay with them for free. So I've got a friend moving to Portugal soon. Hopefully I'll get out to visit him at some point. Ailsa, don't worry about that. And everyone worries about not being able to do jobs. No, first of all, nobody knows what you're doing. Secondly, in my limited experience, admittedly, it's the people who are starting right off, who feel like they don't have any experience, who do better jobs than the people who've been there for a long time. You always learn. Nobody knows what they're doing, and people are always much kinder in jobs than you expect. Will do. Thank you. I've got a bunch of weird thing about my master's course, was that it was filled with Greeks. So many Greek folk in that course. So want to visit them and see them as well. It'd be nice. Greece would be fun to visit. So someone asked a question about independence movements. So, my basic it's the question that anyone asks you when you're Scottish and you're not in Scotland, especially if you're on the left. If you're young and left wing, I'm still young. If you're young and left wing, people ask you about independence. In my view, it doesn't matter. I think it's a complete I'm not going to campaign for either option, to be honest. I'm not going to shed a tear for the Union if Scotland goes independent. Doesn't bother me. But I'm not going to campaign for it either, because it is, in the most accurate sense of the word, bourgeois politics. It's a politics. A Scottish independence movement is a movement which is, holy shit, fucking dying of thirst. You get cheers as well. This is incredible. I've never had such a fucking lucrative stream before. Thank you so much. Cheers to you. You get dying of thirst gets a cheers and a wee sip, since we're not dying of thirst. So the thing about independence in Scotland, the question is essentially, which distant neoliberal state are we going to fight against? The Scottish state is, from its the emergent state of Scotland, is neoliberal. It just is, and in some ways it's more concentrated. Its power is much more concentrated than Westminster. That's just how the structure's been built in. in the Scottish Parliament. The whole of the Scottish state is embedded within neoliberal logics. Like, if Scotland went independent tomorrow, we would see no real improvement. And the problem, I think, the actual like thing worth criticising about independence, a stupid thing. The thing worth criticising about independence is that it is completely hog-tied the Scottish left to only discuss independence. So on the one hand, like, independence happens, then suddenly the Scottish left might have something to actually, like, they might be free of having to fucking talk about it, and they might be able to actually organise themselves. On the other hand, they might just end up partisans about independence, and there's, you know, talk to any non-white Scottish person and they will express to you severe worry about the state of the independence movement and the racism within that. Obviously, there's as much as Scotland likes to talk up a game of civil nationalism, that's the same nationalism that is applied to the US, and it is still racial, and it will always be racial. There will always be a racial element to Scottish nationalism, and we've seen that demonstrated to us time and time again in how that nationalism has been projected. The good example, an example that I used in my video on Scottish imperialism, was the SNP putting out this, back in like 2009, they put out a big document about Scots around the world, inviting Scots around the world home, and it features white people on the cover of this document, this flyer. It featured white people from Canada, Australia and New Zealand, and then when people criticised that, they photoshopped one image of an Indian guy on it, without really understanding the point that was being made. So like within the nationalist movement and within the institutionalised nationalist movement, as well as in the various people who subscribe to it, there is a huge degree of white supremacy, basically. And that's something that the Scottish left has not been able to grapple with in relation to independence, whether they support it or not. And these are the sort of questions that are worth examining in regard to independence for Scotland, rather than, like, who gives a fuck about the UK? Nobody gives a fuck about the UK. I would laugh if the UK dissolved, it'd be funny. The problem is, Scotland should also be dissolved. It's all fucking fake bullshit anyway. Yeah. And then the other ones, Welsh I'm not as keen to talk about publicly because I'm not Welsh and I don't know much about that context. The other major one, well, there's things like Cornish independence, but that is bound up really strongly with some racial identities which are not good. But there's things like NIP as well, which if anyone who's not aware of NIP is the Northern Independence Party, which emerged initially to combat a regional inequalities within the UK, where like London, South East gets a lot of investment, gets a lot of stuff, although this story is simplified massively because there's huge inequalities within that, fucking very tied to racialized groups and groupings as well, but generally there's more investment in the South East compared to like the North. And the Northern Independence Party started as like this thing of saying, oh, we fight for an independent North, and I think, though I'm not quite entirely sure, I think that started more of a sort of like provocation of saying like, we are an autonomous region with some degree of autonomous culture, we deserve as much as the South East gets, and so on and so forth. But as it's gone on, this sort of bit of Northern independence has become much more serious, and you've got a lot of like men in flat caps talking about how Northerners are inherently left-wing, and it's the same sort of shit that you get in Scottish independence as well, and it's kind of a joke, I think. I don't think it's a real political movement. I don't think it has much real politics behind it either. There are people who would get very angry at me for saying that, but, you know, whatever. But what would happen to Rangers? They have songs and everything. I mean, if there was one reason to vote Scottish independence, it would be to watch Rangers fans lose their fucking minds. That would be tasty. Look, I'm not saying there's many good reasons to vote for independence, but maybe spite might be one of them. I love that my YouTube consumption shifts dramatically between indie games, K-pop, and discussion of neoliberalism. I mean, I'm sure there's a connective tissue throughout all of them. Yeah, I mean, if I had any Irish ancestry, I would no doubt apply for an Irish passport. The EU is a shit organisation, but being able to live and work in any country is a good deal for people who can, white people from Western Europe mostly. Yeah, I mean, I think spite is a big motivating factor for a lot of folk for the independence movement, which, it's not necessarily the best political motivation, but it is funny. You gotta give them that. I mean, like, things that worry me about Scottish independence, like, remember the anyone who knows about there were strikes, rail strikes. I don't know if they're still going on in Scotland. I think they are, and there was a huge number of SNP supporters who were framing the strikes as being at the behest of London bosses, and were doing this massive anti-union campaign. And that's not confined to this moment. It's been a feature of SNP politics for a long, long time. But this idea that independence is an innately, or even mostly left-wing movement is, I think, bullshit. I don't think that's true. I don't think it's going to be true if/when Scotland goes independent. I don't think that's going to have much impact on most people's daily lives. It has the potential to make it worse, potential to make it better. That depends on how organised the Scottish left is, and the Scottish left therefore has to get its head out of its arse and start organising properly instead of organising about independence issues. This week there's been discussion of ranked choice voting in the States. What do you think are the best ways of determining either representation or policies? I mean, first past the post is a bad system, but I mean, proportional representation. You see proportional representation in many European states. It doesn't necessarily get over any of the issues endemic in liberal politics. If it was put to a referendum, I'm sure I would say, yeah, might as well vote for it and see what happens. But it's not. These questions of voting systems aren't really ones that necessarily I think are that important, because this is still voting for representatives within a fundamentally liberal institution. Maybe it would have a difference. A proportional representation system. I don't know how that would work in the US in terms of its state system and in terms of the various complexities of that. Your voting system's fucked. It is, but changing it isn't gonna fix things, really. God, that takes me back, arguing about voting systems. That's pure undergraduate days for me. I was never very good at that stuff because the technicalities of different voting systems always kind of just bored me. Yeah. I always notice how democracy is always limited to representational politics. Direct action and direct democratic participation is never mentioned. Well, yeah, that's liberalism for you. You'll get some bones thrown to direct democratic action, and that democracy is never, expanded into any further spheres than than the political that already exists. It's not expanded into the economic, it's not expanded into the household, really. It's not expanded into schooling or higher education or healthcare. These things aren't. Democracy is basically a farce. Isn't boredom the point of liberal electoral systems? I don't know if it's the point. I think it's probably an effect which has developed as the enfranchisement has expanded. Because these at least in the UK and the US, these liberal democratic systems are basically the same ones that have been set up hundreds of years ago. They've just been expanded. So the boredom at the point of design was never the point. They didn't want to bore the landowners into voting. But a development of... I'd say the boredom's probably an effect of the lack of power that actually voting wields in a political system. If you're voting for a couple parties that don't really do anything different and don't have a huge impact on your life outside of once or twice every couple decades someone coming in who offers change, whether that's legitimate change like someone like Sanders or Corbyn, who, while still existing within liberal capitalism, offered some degree of hegemonic shift away from the neoliberal form of that to someone more like Trump, whose change was fake. Without, aside from these like once or twice occasions, most people are aware that politics doesn't really have a huge impact on their life, that whatever choice they make on that ballot paper. And it is, it's an atomizing system, this form of liberal democracy. What is democracy undergraduate in a nutshell? These are the sort of questions that were things that drove me away from political science when I was an undergrad, and moved me into more of the stuff I do now, because it's like you look at like all these studies on what's the right voting system to have, and what's the right type of party structure, how people's voting behaviour is affected by particular things, and you just start thinking like, what's the fucking point? What are we actually looking at here? This isn't real. This is just an expression of something deeper. And it's one of those, like, yeah, Johanna's right. One of those things that, like, the amount of teaching that I have done, when people start talking about like political structures, I've always wanted to try and get them to question why they're talking about political structures and the limits of those political structures that they're talking about. And for people who haven't done that before, they start getting quite confused, and they start like, so a good example, say you talk to someone about how to get better human rights compliance within states like the UK and the US, and you say to them like, well, how do you think we should do better compliance? And for someone who's not had much introduction to radical politics, they'll say things like, well, we need to do more powerful oversight mechanisms, we need the ability to force some states into taking some recommendations. And you start asking people like, well, how do you, who's in charge of the forcing mechanism? How do you get people to acquiesce to such forcing, especially if it's a global hegemon? And they start like getting deeper and deeper. They're like, oh, we need to completely rethink the system. And you say, well, how do we rethink the system? How does the system get rethought and re-implemented within the current politics that exists? And they often start going, oh God, I've got no idea. And that is the correct answer, because there is no way to do that. And it's the same in the sort of national democratic level as well. These questions are questions deeper than their expressions in liberal institutions like the international legal order, the international institutional order or the national democratic order. These are deeper questions that need to be confronted and organised against. Electoralism is about bollocks. Yeah, you fucking got it. You've just that's fucking cut through my entire ramble. Thank you for joining us. Sorry, let me lean in to see your name. Only Uke that matters. Good to have you. We'll maybe get another tune on the go, and then I'll finish this glass. I'll get another tune on the go, and then that'll be the last for tonight. Whew. Any requests for genre? Any sort of thing that they want to play? Bearing in mind that if it's not something I can do, I will just ignore you. To no one's surprise, I've decided to do disco. Welcome, Rewired Soul. YouTube homepage is shit. Jesus. Fucking hell. Cheers again. Amazing. That, unbelievable. Cheers to you. Thanks for being here. I do like this tune. I'm feeling this. Hello Harker, welcome. We're reaching the end of the stream today, but you're welcome. Welcome at the end. We're just this last wee tune, just giving some folk some time to come up with any questions or any topics they'd want me to slightly tipsily talk about before the end. And also I'm very much feeling this fucking disco. So yeah, that's what's happening. Next video is going to be on masculinity. I know this has been a hot topic. I've been meaning to get to this video for such a long time. I'm currently in the research for it now. I know it's a hot topic right now. Lots of people talk about the manosphere. This is absolutely no shade. Everyone who's done really good work on the manosphere stuff, and like everything. Chill Goblin's done great work on that. FD is constantly doing good work on that, but I feel like there's not much done on yeah, manosphere stuff. Like, there's not much done on like materialism and masculinity, and this is like true within the literature as well. Um, Lots of stuff on social reproduction theory is obviously pertains to the recreation of feminine gendering and femme subjectivities, but not much to do with masculine subjectivities. So I wanted to do something on that, and so the sort of provisional plan that I've got so far is on for like a first section on like patriarchy, how does patriarchy work, how it reproduces itself, the strategies of reproduction, because like in a lot of the literature, the patriarchy is taken as a given and it's kind of historicized. It's like, oh, throughout history, men have been placed in dominant roles, given much more power within particular contexts, often within the family, and obviously the various disaggregations of that among different lines and different vectors notwithstanding. But there's little like acknowledgement of how patriarchy reproduces itself and why it reproduces itself in this particular way. Like, why are men placed in a dominant role? Why are men given more power? Because being a historical accident is not a satisfying explanation to me. Yeah, kind of riffing on Caliban stuff, yeah. But in the opposite way. And then the second section on is going to be on sort of trying to break down a notion of what is a man. Because, you know, that with like the proliferation of transphobia, you get a lot of very quick definitions to bat off transphobes, like what is a woman. But that can lead us, I think, to rest on our laurels about these things, and nobody's really like questioning like what is a man, and indeed, and these are questions which, and this is stuff that I'm very quick to acknowledge. Trans men have a much more deeper knowledge of like these sort of questions than cis men. But it's still something that's worth like questioning, like all this, like what is a man, what makes a man, am I a man? It's worth considering. And then a final one about putting forward any sort of revolutionary masculinity and criticising previous notions of revolutionary masculinity, which have been heavily workerist, heavily like they've been really ableist in how they a man provides, a man is a worker and all that stuff. And they've been often really racist as well. So and I've been worried like a lot of the way that we talk about like alternative masculinities. It's like we need to be more caring and like in line with Bell Hooks's book on masculine love. You need to like unlock a sort of emotional potential within men, which is often locked out of. But that's not enough, is it? We need to do more for a revolutionary masculinity, if such a thing can exist, than just unlock an emotional potential. There needs to be much more about what masculinity can be than that. It has to be actively anti-patriarchal, and it has to be like material in its anti-patriarchy. But I've not done enough in the reading. I've not reached the sort of conclusions, so I can't give you any sort of more on. These are the sort of generic points that I'm sort of getting at this point. The reading has been quite difficult because it's tended to be stuff that's really out of my wheelhouse. Because a lot of it is really like critical theory. A lot of it's really psychoanalytic, and if anyone knows me a little bit, I'm not a big fan of the psychoanalysts and psychoanalysis as a form of like critical engagement with things. It just doesn't gel with me. So a lot of the reading has been really challenging. It's been difficult. It's been really, really hard to try and break through, to try and think of something like a through line, a theoretical through line to this. So yeah, this is what I'm working on at the moment. I'm hoping to get it done by the end of the month, but we'll see. It might just have to be something that isn't necessarily incomplete. Some early sort of thoughts to return to. But yeah, I think there, and what I've noticed is that there is a massive gap in the literature on a social reproductive analysis of masculinity. So I might try and spin this video into a paper at some point. Gotta fucking keep content churning for the universities as well. But yeah, it's interesting stuff, I think. But I've been kind of unsatisfied with a lot of the academic work on masculinity for a while. So we'll see how it turns out. Yeah, let's catch up on the chat. What's chat been saying? David Buss. I don't think so. He might be in my. I've got a huge digital library of stuff I need to get to read on this. So he might be in there, but I don't think so. Yeah, I mean, the James saying that in patriarchal societies, man's work, like the productive sphere, is rewarded much more than the socially reproductive sphere, and the socially reproductive sphere is gendered and is like largely placed on the shoulders of women. But that I think there's more that we need to be able to say on that, and the kinds of masculinity that produces, and how that is disaggregated, because it's not always the case, like and like different types of men produce different masculinities, but there's the problem inherent within sort of postmodernist and post-structuralist approaches to these things, which spawn increasingly more plural forms of a thing. So like they produce lots of masculinities, but what is the through line of these masculinities? What connects them? And that's a question that's bigger than the video can be, but it's something interesting that's, I'm not sure, being answered adequately. Like, if there are lots of masculinities, why do we say there's lots of masculinities and not just lots of different genders? Why are these masculinities? Like that's an interesting question, which I'm not sure has been properly answered yet. Let's see. Bell, I mean, the book on Bell Hook's book on masculinity was the first of her work that I've read, and it was a good book. But I did feel a lot of the time reading that book that I was left saying, like, asking why this was the case. So she invokes patriarchy a lot. Patriarchy does this thing. She'll often say patriarchy produces these certain effects. But I'm left like thinking, why does patriarchy produce these effects? What is the impulse that patriarchy has to produce these effects? And for domination isn't an adequate explanation to me, because why that domination in that case? We have to, like, there's more questions that need to be asked in this field, and a lot of the literature that I've been reading has been like saying masculinity studies is consistently 10, 15, 20 years behind feminist studies, and that's I think quite clear in a lot of the literature that I've been reading so far. It's something that is interesting to look at. Yeah, sorry, chat moved too quickly for me there. And I also want to talk about, like, I'm thinking of like peppering it in with some sort of not complete, but like some sort of reflections on my experience with masculinity. So starting with a story like when I was like 10 years old, my brother, we were up in Shetland, the Shetland Islands, and it was January. And January in the Shetland Islands is cold, and we were at the Lerwick swimming pool, Clickerman swimming pool, and they have an outdoor pool. And my brother said to me, if you walk round this pool 100 times, you'll be a real man. So I did that. I did it. I was freezing. It was probably dangerous. And I jumped into the warm pool and I said to my brother, I did it. Am I a real man now? And he went, no, a real man goes his own way. And if there's anything to illustrate the futility of trying to fit into a type of masculinity, it's that lesson that my brother taught me on that day. Yeah, so the sort of structure I'm thinking is like peppering an analysis of like a kind of structural, or my general sort of slightly abstracted view of masculinity and patriarchy, and peppering it through with these more personal stories about how masculinity has been confronted in my particular life, and things like, you know, dealing with hen parties who essentially sexually harass you in nightclubs and things like that, and how that interacts with masculinity and femininity. So that, yeah, these are the sort of my general. I've just sort of, I've got a provisional plan. I'm not sharing on Patreon yet, but I will be sharing on Patreon once that's all ready. Yeah, so that's what my next plan is. I really hope it does well, because I need that video to do well. Yeah, that's next plan. Anyway, what's chat saying? Thank you. I mean, I don't think the paper would be a self-study. I think the paper, I think if I was going to do a paper, it would try to keep it firmly within a social reproduction theory frame, because I need to get a paper published on that, to be honest, if I'm looking to create an academic brand for myself. But yeah, it would be less a sort of personal, reflective, and more of a sort of analysis like that. Do I think I'm going to get to cover all this in one video? Probably not. Never do. That's hence the I'm sure I can do both. I will write the video first, Harker, and then if it's something that I think is worth pursuing to a paper, I'll give you a shout. It never is. I never cover everything that I need to in a video. That's one of the reasons why I have the bibliography, is because these videos are introductions to topics which are beyond the scope of a video, and if I think about if I might leave it as to do 2 videos or to do further explorations on the topic, but I might not. So it probably won't all be covered. But we'll see what happens with you. We'll see what I can shit out in the next few weeks. I read an interesting book recently called "Towards a Gay Communism" by was it Maes? Mario Miele. Yeah, the Will to Change is the Bell Hooks book that I read. Living, Breathing, Drug, PSA. Wow, what a name. Yeah, I just read that. Finished reading that the other day, and I thought it was good. But it really did not answer any of the questions that I had. And to be honest, I think that book is aimed at a feminist and women audience rather than a man's audience, because it's mostly about Bell Hooks and her own interaction with men in her life, rather than necessarily for men, I guess. I kind of got that impression. There's a similar book by J.J. Bola in the Pluto Press series about masculinity, which I read a while back, but that left me kind of. That was another book that was like, I want more. Like, I want more than what's being given to me in this book, because that was like it was like a manual for maybe 16 to 18-year-olds, and it wasn't it didn't have much effect on me. It was like, oh yeah, men can be like, it's good to be in touch with your emotions, and you're like, yeah, I mean, I guess, but this isn't what I need right now. That book made me trans. The Bell Hooks Will to Change book. Hooks book, right. I have to say, it didn't make me trans. We'll have to find another book to force femme me. The J.J. Bola book. 1 second, I'll get that J.J. Bola book. It's called Masculinity Redefined, J.J. Bola. Pluto Press, so, Duncan 50, and you'll get 50% off of that. And it's fine. It was not what I was looking for. I was hoping for more from it, but it was fine. It made lots of decent points, but it was all very like pedestrian, very stuff like you already know. Basically, if you're older than 18 and you've interacted with a woman before, like. For children, Neil Anderson, yeah, it would be very good. The Boy Crisis by Warren Farrell, a bunch of women blaming patriarchal nonsense. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things in sort of when you're trying to sort of look at masculinity, there's definitely a risk of getting into that stuff, and you see it sometimes with some brands of men's studies things, where they blame feminism for issues that men are having, or they try to hide, like they try to use the fact that patriarchy is inhibiting on men as well, in particular ways, as evidence for the fact that women aren't especially oppressed under patriarchy or under capitalism, which is of course false. I've noticed that being a common thing as well. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the plan for the next video. I'm hoping it's going to be good. It's been a while since I've had a sort of video essay in the sense of like it's similar to like the one on disability in class. I think that's the last sort of video essay that I felt like has properly dealt with a topic. Like the one on Adam Conover's show was like fun and a good examination of propaganda, but it wasn't like delving deep into a topic like the disability one or this masculinity one is. So it's fun to get back into the reading. I've been super distracted with PhD stuff the past few months, trying to like get through that. Yeah, be good, and hopefully it will be a hit. And I feel like there's like with things like Andrew Tate and the kind of masculinity manosphere stuff around, I feel like there's a tendency to like constrict online reflections on masculinity by like reacting to that rather than trying to do something different. So we start like talking about how Andrew Tate is a misogynistic fucking sex trafficking wanker, or you talk about Jordan Peterson being like a misogynist and all that stuff, or the problems with the manosphere and like tapping into young men's spheres, and everything that we talk about masculinity is oppositional to the right wing, sexist and misogynistic view of it. And I want to try and examine masculinity on its own terms without that. Not that that's wrong itself, because it's not, because obviously we need to confront that shit, but like I think we need to do that and other stuff as well. History of masculinity, yeah, that could be that. Do you know who that was by? History of masculinity. The stuff I've been like, a lot of the stuff that I've been looking at has been, no, that's good. The algorithm. I mean, the algorithm's not been particularly kind to me for the past few months, so we're in the hole. We'll deal with the hole when we get there. Do you know who the History of Masculinity was by? A living, breathing drug PSA? Yeah, I don't want to promise more than I can deliver with this video. I'm not going to be able to redefine the field in a 40-minute video, but we'll see what we can do. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks I'll have a plan and a bibliography for that. I'm just going to take a note of that that citation, and yeah, cheers. Yeah, FD and Chill, I was saying, both of them have made good work on this. And I know Chill made a good video on this because I was in that video. But I wanted to sort of add a bit more. And it's interesting how this has come about at a particular, because I've been thinking about doing this video for a long time, like way back in like March, maybe earlier February. I was thinking about doing a video on masculinity, and suddenly it started sort of picking up among different left-wing YouTubers to deal with masculinity, and that's interesting in itself. I wonder what produced that. If there's been like an increase in right-wing, like overtly misogynistic masculinities, or not. But it's interesting that this has become a sort of topic that lots of people are interested in. All right, we will call that a day for now. I hope you've all had a good stream. I have. It's been a good stream. I'm feeling much more chilled now than I was several hours ago when I was feeling kind of shitty. So thanks everyone for coming. And I will leave you with some music for 5 minutes, and I'll hang around and chat while the music's going. But yeah, thanks so much for having me and for chatting and hanging out. Cheers.